Africa has been a major recipient of foreign aid. What if I told you that cutting foreign aid might actually help Africa? Africa loses more than 60 billion US dollars each year due to illicit financial frauds. Aid is often tied on interest of the donor countries. Today, we'll be exploring how reducing foreign aid could expose economic imbalances and push Africa towards self-sufficiency. Have you ever wondered why, despite Africa being rich in resources, so many African nations still struggle with poverty? What if I told you that cutting foreign aid might actually help Africa? Today, we'll be exploring how reducing foreign aid could expose economic imbalances and push Africa towards self-sufficiency if our leaders choose to act. For decades, Africa has been a major recipient of foreign aid. But the reality is that much of that money received flows right back to the countries that provide it. In fact, in 2018, the total amount of the foreign aid to Africa was around 50 billion US dollars. Yet, some studies suggest that Africa loses more than 60 billion US dollars each year due to illicit financial frauds, more than it receives in aid. That one simply shows a major imbalance. Why is this happening? Well, aid is often tied on trade agreements, tied on contracts, and the interest of the donor countries, meaning aid doesn't always end up in the hands of the people who need it most. Africa is a home to 30% of the world's mineral reserves and the largest producer of key resources like gold, diamond, oil. We are the second to UAE in the entire world. Yet many African nations still struggle with poverty. How is this possible while billions of dollars in aid flood the continent? Africa's resources continue to be extracted, often with unfair deals. For example, in 2019, African countries lost an estimated of 29 US billion dollars due to unfair mining contracts. That is according to a report from the African Union. So much of the aid Africa receives is just a drop in an ocean compared to what is extracted in form of resources and debts. So the real question is, why should Africa depend on foreign aid when it has so much wealth within its own borders? If aid were reduced and stopped, I think it could expose these economic imbalances between the African countries and countries that give aid. Of course, it would force our leaders to rethink on how they manage our resources. Of course, instead of relying on aid, our countries would negotiate better terms of the extraction of our minerals, but also to enter fairer trade agreements. By cutting aid, Africa might also focus more on building industries that add value to our raw materials, like refining minerals, processing agricultural products, instead of simply exporting resources that is of less economic value. But here lies the challenge. Will Africa all African governments use this reduction in aid as a wake-up call, or they will continue to rely on external support. For a fact, for this shift to happen, our governments need to make fundamental changes in reducing corruption, in improving governance, and fostering a transparent and business-friendly environment. Without these reforms, we'll keep on missing on the opportunity to harness our full potential to self-reliance. And we would also acknowledge that governments that will be able to build stronger institutions, they will make fairer deals, and they will empower the local businesses. Of course, the country will thrive without aid or minimal aid. And on the other hand, governments that do not make these changes to fight corruption, to ensure good governance, to ensure prioritization of resources into investments, not luxury, of course, they will keep on falling into the cycle of dependency, and they will definitely struggle. Internal reforms are crucial. Stronger governance and corruption measures and fiscal management are essential for ensuring that Africa's wealth is used for the benefit of its people. Without transparency and accountability, the promise of self-sufficiency will remain in a distant dream. Africa must work together as a unified force to reduce aid dependency and build economies. Africa must work together as a unified force to reduce aid dependency and build economies that rely on internal strength. So, by negotiating fair deals, harnessing resources, and empowering local industries, Africa can create a future where aid is no longer necessary. Reducing aid, as it has happened in this case of USAID, isn't a setback. To me, I see isn't a setback, but it is a challenge and an opportunity. So it is time for us as Africans to rise by negotiating better deals and focusing on resource mobilization, but also investing in our own people. What can we do? It starts with each of us. Demand our governments to be transparent. We need to hold our leaders accountable and push for policies that foster local businesses, lead local economic development, and fair trade. So we need to support movements that work for the real change in Africa, the Pan-Africanism that we normally talk about. Together we can help and shape Africa that thrives on its own. From your side, what do you think? Is cutting aid the way forward, or should Africa seek a different approach? Let's continue with the conversation. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and share and subscribe if you believe in a self-reliant Africa. Thank you very much.